neither of us saw my baby when he first came out. But the reason why the doctors went quiet is because they were so shocked about how many times the umbilical cord had been wrapped around his neck. And that is why all during the 2 hours of pushing and 10 hours of total labor, he had never descended, was he was just so tangled.
Welcome to the Be Well podcast. Here we share real stories, have honest conversations, and offer practical wisdom to help women prepare for pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and beyond. I'm your host, Candace Jackson, birth and postpartum doula, wife, mama to two. Oh, and I'm a childbirth educator. I forgot that part too. Childbirth educator. So today I'm so excited to have on today's episode Blythe, and Blythe is coming all the way from Utah. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and how many children you have and what's life like in Utah.
Yeah, so I live in St. George, Utah. So for anyone who's not aware of Utah geography, it is kind of right on the border of Arizona and Nevada.
Okay.
So it's really hot down here, but yeah, we actually just recently moved here. But I just have one baby. He just turned 1, and he is the light and life of my, like, he's just my everything. I love him so much. And right now it's just me and my husband and my baby, and we're living in St. George, and I'm staying at home with him and just having a good time being a stay-at-home mom.
I love that. So let's talk about your baby's birth. So tell me everything that happened. And I know you mentioned your labor was 10 hours and what transpired after that. So tell me a little bit more about your birth story. Actually, before we get into that, how was
Yeah.
your pregnancy?
Oh,
Pregnancy before all of that. How was pregnancy for you?
yeah. So I actually had a super easy pregnancy. I loved being pregnant. The first trimester, is kind of rough for everyone. I had that nausea, but I mostly would get like car sickness in
Okay.
the first trimester. And then after the first trimester, pregnancy was a dream for me. I loved being pregnant. It was so fun. I'm super extroverted. So whenever anyone would ask me questions about my pregnancy, I loved talking to people about my baby, and I was just very excited. So I had a really, really easy pregnancy. Yeah.
Good, good,
Yeah.
good. All
And
right. Okay,
oh,
go ahead.
sorry. No.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And then leading up to my birth was like everything was like picture perfect. Like everything looked really great. So, yeah.
All right. So let's talk about your birth. You had a hospital birth or a home birth?
Yeah, so I had a hospital birth. My plan was to do natural labor, to go into labor naturally,
Mhm.
and to just do the whole thing all natural, no epidural, no Pitocin or anything like that. That was the original plan. And I had started dilating at 38 weeks. So in my mind, I was like, everything's going according to plan. Like my baby's gonna come naturally, and then the day before my birth, um, what prompted me to go into the hospital was I actually had stopped feeling him move. So
Okay.
it had been 24 hours, and I had felt him move, but he was rowdy in the womb. Like I would see my belly move. Like he was very, very mobile in the womb. And so when I kind of stopped feeling him move, I was a little bit frightened.
Mhm.
So I called up my mother-in-law actually, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to go into the hospital with me?" My mom actually had passed
Oh,
away like a few months before my birth, so that's why I called my mother-in-law. But so we ended up going to the hospital together, and when we got to the hospital, we went to labor and delivery, and they had sent me up to the monitor, and in my mind, I wasn't going to give birth that day. They were just going to check on my baby and everything was going to be fine. But they had they had hooked me up to the monitors, and then the nurse left, and the doctor came back, and the doctor was like, "Hey, so the hospital with your baby, so we're gonna get you all hooked up into a room. And that was quite shocking for me because I just thought everything was gonna be okay. But at this point, I was 40 and 6, so
Okay.
I was overdue. So I was kind of like, all right, I'm over it. I'm ready to have my baby now. That'll be fine. So I called my doula, which was my aunt, and she came to the hospital. And then my husband was actually 3 hours away, because at the time he was attending college, um, and my doctor was in Utah County, and so he would drive back to us on the weekends, and then during the week he was going to school, 3 hours away. So I had to call him and I said, "Hey, we're having our baby right now. You better drive up." And that's when they started me on Pitocin. And so then I had been on Pitocin for a couple of hours, um, probably 3 hours, because I remember my husband being there. And the doctor really wanted to break my water, and I had told him I don't want my waters broken at all. Um, and instead, I had requested like a balloon catheter. They call it a Cook's catheter, balloon catheter, where it's like the figure eight that they put in your cervix, and then when you have contractions, it manually dilates you. Because my contractions were super consistent, but they just weren't getting stronger, and so they were happening every 5 minutes, and they were a minute long, but they weren't increasing in intensity. And my cervix was soft, and it was starting to dilate, but it wasn't effacing. So so I just requested the catheter instead of getting my waters broken. And then after a couple of hours, honestly, when you're in birthland, it's like, phew, I don't know how time was working then, but coming out of it, everyone's like, this is what the timeline was like, you know? But after a couple of hours of having the Cook's catheter in, I had then thrown up, and then the catheter had come out, and they said when I got to dilated to a 5, that's when the catheter would come out. So I knew at that point I was at like a 5. And then very soon after that, I started to panic, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And my aunt, who's my doula, she's like, this is transition. You know, these are feelings that you get during transition. So, so then I was transitioning, and then like very soon after that, the nurse was like, "Hey, is it okay that I check you?" I was like, "Yeah, go ahead." She's like, "Actually, you're dilated to a 10, so if you want to start pushing, you can start pushing." And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's push." But I didn't really have the urge to push, even though I had been dilated to a 10. But I was, I had never given birth before. So
Right.
in my mind, I was dilated to a 10. So I was like, okay, let's start pushing. So, and I pushed for 2 hours, and I didn't know that I pushed for 2 hours. I was just, in the zone. And after about 2 hours of pushing, so while I was in labor, the shift actually changed. So the doctor who was there initially had gone home, and then the new doctor had come on shift. And along with that was a new nurse. And the nurse had told me that this new doctor was very, how did she word it? Very medical about birth. He really liked C-sections, she said. And so I knew that I was going to really have to hold my ground with him. And so, but after about 2 hours of pushing, the doctor came in and was like, "Hey, we don't know the positioning of your baby. We don't know really anything that's going on with him in there. And so I really feel like we should break your water. We should check his position." And going up to my birth, I felt like I had really prepared myself, um, to know my body intuitively and to really, hold my ground. Like I felt like I really worked on, advocating for myself, because something about the birth world is like you're raised your whole life to be a good girl. You're raised to say yes to authority. You're not raised to like say no to the doctors. And so um going leading up to my birth, that's something I really worked on, was like being able to say no and being able to think for myself and be intuitive about my body. And so I felt like I had held my ground for long enough about breaking my water. So I finally let them break my water. Because at this point, after pushing for 2 hours, my baby still wasn't crowning. And with every push, they could see my amniotic sac. So they could see the amniotic sac, but they wouldn't see his head. And so at that point, I felt comfortable with them breaking my water. And when they did, the doctor said that he could feel that my baby was coming out head first or face first. So he's coming out face first, and he had not dropped at all into the birth canal. And so he had said, your baby's coming out face first. You cannot deliver a baby face first. And I had read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. And in that book, there's the story of the woman who gives birth to a baby that comes out face first. Um, and my aunt and I had talked about that story, and she said, "Yes, you can deliver a baby face first, you know." And but like I knew, just in that moment, I just knew in my heart like I was going to have a C-section. It's just crazy. Like you just know things like that, you know, like your intuition just tells you. So I was like, okay, yeah, like I'll have the C-section, but I don't want to be put under. And so the doctor's like, okay, like we'll get an anesthesiologist. So the anesthesiologist was, they had multiple C-sections going on at that time, which is crazy. But the anesthesiologist that was on call was 20 minutes away. So after breaking my water, my contractions went from feeling um like they say pain with a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So my contractions went from like feeling purposeful to feeling very painful. And so in that moment I had started to feel really scared, felt a lot of pain, and I just remember my nurse just like she just grabbed my hands and she said, she looked at me and she said, "Blythe, you are in control. Like you are in control." And that just brought me right back, and I just like kept breathing. The anesthesiologist came, and my C-section was 10 minutes. So they had me in and out in 10 minutes. But when they had taken my when they had gotten my baby out, the room was silent. Like, and my heart dropped. I was like, "Is he okay? Is he okay?" And the doctors were like, "Yes, he's okay. He's beautiful, you know." And then I heard him cry, and then, you know, everyone's crying because it's just this beautiful moment. And the whole time my husband was like right with me. So he wasn't on the other side of the curtain. He was right there with me. So neither of us saw my baby when he first came out. But the reason why the doctors went quiet is because they were so shocked about how many times the umbilical cord had been wrapped around his neck. And that is why all during the 2 hours of pushing and 10 hours of total labor, he had never descended, was he
Right.
was just so tangled. And so um at the time it was like really disappointing, but I know that it was like the right thing. Like it was supposed to happen that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyways, I feel like I got a little carried away with, I just kind of
No,
went
no,
into
no,
my
no,
story,
no.
but uh
No, this is your show. Like we, whatever you want to talk about, that's what I'm here for, to hold space for you. But I do have some questions for you. So one
yeah,
question I do want to ask is, was there anything? So let's go back a little bit further. So like preparation. Was
yeah.
there any classes, like childbirth ed classes, other than reading anime book? Was there anything else that you did to prepare yourself, and especially to try to get yourself in the mindset to be able to have a natural birth, because that's what you were wanting originally?
Yes, yeah. So I did a lot of prep work. So um I listened to the hypnobirthing podcast. That was one of my go-tos. I listened to that a lot. I listened to a lot of different hypnobirthing hypnosis tracks. I read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. Another book that I really loved was a book called Ancient Birth Maps for Modern Birth. That was a book that I read that I really loved. I also watched a couple of documentaries. I watched Ina May's documentary that was really awesome. And then I had watched the docu-series. I'm losing the name of it now, but it was the docu-series about just birth and women who were giving birth. And then um, I did a class through WIC,
Okay.
which is a really great resource. But yeah, I did a class through WIC. That was really awesome. And then I also did exercises. Like there was this one exercise that I had heard about where to practice your breathing, you hold on to ice cubes and you like do the deep breathing with the ice cubes. I had done a lot of that. Um, yeah, think just things like that. Yeah.
All right. So now going back to your birth and everything.
Hmm.
So in that moment when you had to have the C-section and all of that, do you feel that there was something that you could have done to better prepare you for that? Or did you feel like, no, I'm in the mindset, my baby, I just want my baby to be healthy and for myself to be healthy. So how did you deal with that transition when you were kind of set on having a natural birth and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, we need to get this baby out and you need a C-section?
Yeah. So initially I had felt just kind of defeated and like disappointed. Because in the moment, like my emotions were just so high. Like I just had all of these emotions that were mostly sad or scared. But then after the fact, looking back onto my labor and my birth, I had also had like I had my doula there, my sister-in-law was there, my mother-in-law was there, and then my husband was there. And my sister-in-law, my doula, who's my aunt, they had both had home births, had three natural births. And so I felt very comfortable with them being there and like talking me through labor and everything. And afterward, like talking to them, I was just like, man, I'm so disappointed. Like I felt like, and I had heard so many podcasts about women who had had emergency C-sections who afterward felt like they actually weren't necessary, you know? And so in my mind, I was like, man, was this C-section even necessary? Like, did I really do everything I could have done, you know? And my doula and my sister-in-law, my aunt and my sister-in-law, they had both said, "Oh my goodness, no. Like the strength that you showed in that birth room, like in the labor and delivery room, like was just really inspiring. Like my mother-in-law was super inspired. Like they all said like, no, you really did everything that you could have. And looking back, I really did everything that I could have in that situation. And the only thing that I wish I would have done is more research on C-sections and kind of what they are, the recovery, because preparing for my labor and birth, I was just so anti C-section. I was so against it that I didn't even want to think about it or research about it. When really I should have done the research about it and learned more about C-sections, um, because ultimately the most important thing in the end was that me and my baby made it through, you know. Whereas initially preparing for my labor, I thought the worst thing that could happen is a C-section. Like I'd rather die than have a C-section. But like coming out of it is like no, like the best possible outcome is that me and my baby were completely healthy and fine. Um, and if a C-section was the means to that end, then it it is beautiful, right?
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, so like on the side of did I do everything I could have in the moment to advocate for myself and have my intuition with my body? Yes. But I did not do all the research necessary to have like the right mindset. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. So you spoke a lot about having that support system there with your aunt, your sister-in-law, your mother-in-law, and then your husband being there.
Mhm.
So support is definitely important. So what advice would you give to a mom that may be dealing with something similar that doesn't necessarily have that support system? Because something that I took from what you said also was, during that experience of having the C-section where you were kind of doubting yourself and feeling like maybe this was unnecessary, then you had those people that were there surrounding you to kind of talk you down and like, no, it was absolutely necessary. So, what would you say for the lady who may not have the support system?
Yeah, wow. It's a really great question. I think like hindsight is 2020, you know? Looking back, you're always going to think, "Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that." Um but you need to hold respect and compassion for who you were in that moment, because who you are now is not the same as who you were then. And so having compassion for yourself and just remembering what it was like in that moment, and just kind of realizing you did the best that you could for yourself in that moment. And um because hindsight is 2020, of course we're going to look back and have the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. But you know, now and then you're two different people. And just like, yeah, having that understanding and patience and compassion overall with yourself, for your experience.
That's beautiful. I really like that was a good response. It really was. And it really is, important to have that compassion and like you say, that just being gentle with yourself because you never know how birth will unfold. And so just taking things as, how they come and then saying, okay, I'm gonna put this in my back pocket. We'll process this a little bit later because it's so many things being thrown at you, and you just want to make the right decision at the end of the day. So you can't beat yourself up and then still, be in a good place. So that was an excellent answer. Now,
Thank you.
I want to know more about your recovery. So now,
Mhm.
you have had a C-section, you get home, you have a new baby, your husband, he's still in school at the time, right?
Yeah.
So how was navigating all of that?
Yeah. So my baby was born right before midterms.
Okay.
Um, so my husband, he got to spend a couple of days home with us, and then he had to go back to school. Luckily, my mother-in-law had come and spent the night with me, which was really awesome. But oh, recovering from a C-section, that especially one that you did not plan for, is so, so hard. Like I
Mhm.
have a lot of empathy for every mother out there, whatever recovery they go through. But going through an unplanned C-section recovery, I would not wish on my worst enemy. It was really, really difficult because I wasn't prepared for how weak my core would be afterward, but also just like that incision is so tender. You know, you have to be so careful with your body. Something else that I didn't know about C-sections, and this happens also sometimes like when women have like endometriosis surgery or if they get a hysterectomy, um, you can have gas pain that, um, can linger in your body. So for me, I had like a gas bubble that was stuck in my shoulder.
Okay.
And so, but the only way to relieve that pain is movement by walking around. And so you have this tender pain of your incision and you're wanting to lay in bed all day, but then you also
Mhm.
have this pain of the gas in your body. And so you want to be up and walking, and
Mhm.
it's finding this balance of like, okay, knowing when I have the energy to walk around and knowing when I have the energy to rest.
Right.
And just like um I think I really tried to jump back into normal day-to-day life way too soon after my C-section. Like um I tried to just carry on normally around the house as I would, when I really probably should have just rested and stayed in bed probably for at least a week afterward, just because, like, those first 5 days, especially, are a little bit rough on your body. But by day 5, I felt like the pain had really subsided. So I wish I would have just laid in bed. And I also, like, through my recovery, I really learned how to ask for help. Um, because, like, as a maybe like as a woman in general, like, it's hard to ask for help. Like, you want to be the one that nurtures and the one that cares, and you want to say, like, this is my baby, like, I should be able to take care of my baby on my own. But when you're recovering from a major abdominal surgery, um, you you need that help. And so, like, wishing I there's part of me that wished I would have, like, asked my mother-in-law maybe to stay longer, or um like, asked for some other help outside, for that recovery process, because that was probably the most intense part. Like, looking back on my labor and delivery, like, yes, that was difficult, but the recovery was, like, the difficult part for me, at least. Yeah.
So how would you say getting back to yourself or getting back to some sense of normalcy was after recovering from a C-section? You have a new baby and it's like, you know, you just want to get back to the old Blythe. So what did you do to kind of get yourself back a little bit to some sense of normalcy or to your new normal? I hate that because I think of COVID every time, but
Oh, yeah.
for lack of better phrases, your new normal, what did you do?
Yeah, so for me, it took a while to find my new normal. Around 4 months postpartum, I really fell into a deep depression. It was March, which is, like, the hardest month of the year. It's so dreary outside and there's no holidays, and I had a newborn baby. He was 4 months old. You have the 4-month sleep regression, which is really rough, and I wasn't used to getting no sleep. So around 4 months is, like, when my postpartum experience really came to a peak, where I was like, "Okay, I need to start getting back into who I am and my own body and my own space, headspace, and the new normal," for lack of a better phrase, right? And something that I did was I went to therapy. That really helped me. I saw a therapist, he was great. Um, and I really a hard part of the postpartum experience for me was I felt trapped a little bit. You have a new baby and it's like you're trying to navigate, okay, how do I go to the grocery store now? How do I go hang out with my friends? How do I do that? I have this baby. How do I do this? And for me, it felt I felt very trapped. And so something that I had to do was just go outside every day. I just had to get myself out of the house somehow. And if that was just to go to the gas station to get a candy bar, like, that was what I did. That I went out of the house. And slowly it just started coming back. Like, as soon as I, like, started to go out of the house, that is kind of like what I feel like revived me. Which is kind of silly, but, like, just leaving the house every day, just having a reason to leave the house. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference just being able to get out of the house, get some sunlight on your body, go to
Mhm.
the grocery store alone, or just little simple stuff that we take for granted before having a baby is just the best thing since sliced bread when you get a chance to do it.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, it is. So I wanted to ask you a question pertaining to the loss of your mom. So you
Mhm.
has mentioned, you had lost your mom. I think you said 2 months prior to you going to the hospital with your mother-in-law, correct?
So I was 6 months along when my
Okay.
passed. So
Okay.
she had passed in June, and then I had my baby in October. So what is that? June, July, August, September. So about 4 months, three and a
Okay,
half
4
months.
months.
Yeah.
Okay. So how was navigating pregnancy, delivery, and all of that without having your mom present? And then how was, I'm sure that also kind of maybe played a part in your postpartum recovery and the feelings that you felt having that relationship not there. So what did you do to kind of get over that? And I'm interested to hear because I lost my dad actually postpartum for me, but newly postpartum last year. So I just want to know, I'm interested.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry for your loss. That's really hard.
Same for you. I'm sorry as well.
No, I appreciate that. But so losing my mom was like really hard. So she died from cancer.
Okay.
So she had been diagnosed with cancer um the November, so almost exactly a year before I had my baby. And her getting diagnosed was kind of what kickstarted um me and my husband having conversations about starting our family, you know? And we thought that it might take a couple of months for us to conceive, but as soon as we decided that we were going to start trying, I got pregnant right away. So it was something that, like, my mom had been diagnosed with this terminal cancer. And so my pregnancy and expecting this baby was kind of like a light, you know, something that we could be excited about.
Right.
And so, so when my mom had passed, it was this really devastating blow. She was an amazing mother. She was, you know, the matriarch of our family. Um, and so it was really, really, really hard. And but I had felt like, oh, but I have this baby, you know, to look forward to. Like something that can, you know, be happy and something that can make me excited.
Right.
And so I felt like I had kind of like pushed those grieving feelings to the side, um, and used, you know, having my baby as kind of like a mask for those grieving feelings. And so when I had my birth that didn't go the way that I had planned it, it kind of um, I think that's like why at 4 months, like I had kind of really come to that peak postpartum, where I had that depression. Was I had this birth that didn't really go the way I planned, and I like had this postpartum experience where the whole time I was just wishing that my mom was there, you know? And so I'd finally like faced my feelings at that 4 month mark. And ultimately going through therapy really, really saved me. I learned a lot of really good skills there for my grief and for, you know, the new chapter that I was starting. Because you have this, your whole life, you have your mom that takes care of you, that
Mhm.
nurtures you, that makes you feel special, that makes you feel loved. And the time that you need that the most is when you're postpartum, when you've just had your baby. And it's also this time where you have the most appreciation for your mom, you know, after going through this experience, like breastfeeding for the first time and changing all these diapers and the sleepless nights. And you just like, you gain this new appreciation for your mom. And I just didn't have her there to have, like, have that appreciation. And she would be the only person who, in my mind, who truly knew what I was going through. Because my mom had had 5 C-sections. And
Mhm.
so in that moment, she was the person that I wanted the very most, and she wasn't there. And so that, adding that layer to my postpartum experience was really difficult. Um, but I really had to learn to reach out to my support people. So me and my mother-in-law got really close since I've had my baby. Like she was there in the delivery room. She has seen it all. She's seen all the parts of me, you know. We joke about that a lot. Like we're just close on another level now. But like I've had to put in the work to nurture that relationship and to let her know um how much I need her and how much I appreciate her. And so, although it's not the same as me and my own mother, um, it is still a very valuable relationship to me, and it can become like this nurturing. She's become like this nurturing role for me too. And like another person that I've really had to fall back on was my husband. Um, he is a very nurturing, caring person, and so um, just like really being vulnerable with him and just like accepting all the help that I can get and not feeling like in during that postpartum time, the only person that I needed to worry about was my baby, you know? And um I don't think I fully grasped that because I was worried about my husband being okay and I was worried about, you know, all my family members that wanted to come see the baby and, but ultimately like the only person that I really needed to worry about was like me and my baby and then I I needed to have like that vulnerability with like my husband and then his mom and you know and asking for that help and reaching out to them and nurturing those relationships so that in return I could be nurtured. Yeah. I don't know if I'm
No, that was good.
yeah.
Um, it is important to have that community there, and I'm glad that you were able to have your mother-in-law to kind of step up to be that maternal figure for you in the loss of your mom.
Hmm.
So let's go back to planning, like birth planning.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a mom that's like, I'm going to sit down to write out my birth plan right now, and
Hmm.
I am dead set on having a natural birth, or whatever the case may be? What advice would you give to the mom sitting down right now to write her birth plan?
I would say expect the best but plan for the worst, um send all the good energy you can into your birth and your birth plan and listen to all the positive birth stories and do all that you can to imagine your experience being the most perfect and awesome thing that it can be, because I definitely feel like that's very valuable, but I also think you should um, do the mind work for if things don't go as you want them to and do the research on all the possibilities, like there could be a C-section, there could be um other methods that maybe aren't the ideal, but do the mind work to tell yourself like if it doesn't work out the way that I really want it to, ultimately the most important thing is that me and my baby make it out okay, because if you have that mindset going into it, it won't be as hard afterward, having that building that mindset after the fact,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's excellent advice. I thank you for that. Now, where can the listeners connect with you to be able to follow along with you and your story and your journey and all of that?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram account that's kind of just for fun. It's just kind of like a side thing. It's called Blythe and AJ. I make just random videos, Instagram reels of me and my baby and my day-to-day life. And so,
All righty. Well, I thank you so much for having a conversation with me today, Blythe. It really has been very informative, heartfelt, educational, all the feels, all the emotions. I really do appreciate it. So, if
thank
today's
you.
episode spoke to you, take a moment to share it with another mama who may need to hear it. Also, be sure to leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And this is Candace Jackson reminding you that your voice and your story matter. Until next time, be well, mama.